latest ratings show Nebraska's pasture and range is worse off than better. 34% is rated as poor or very poor. This area last year was not a pleasant place to be for a grazing cow, but in our discussion with Jerry Volesky Thursday here in the Sandhills, he notes these sections are now in much better shape thanks to nearly normal precipitation.
Well, here in the west central part of the Sandhills, certainly things are looking much better this year compared to a year ago. Here at the Goodmanson lab, for example, last year with that severe drought, we had only had about 4.5 inches the entire April through September growing season. Here this year, and even just through August, we've had about through July, excuse me, we've had about 3 times that, or nearly 12 inches. So things are much improved.
Is that close to average?
Yes, it is. Very, very close to average in terms of what we've had this growing season.
What did the pastures, what do the ranges look like in terms of were they able to recover, or did you lose a lot of plants from that grassland?
Right, and it does vary across the Sandhills from west to east. I think here where we are, it's the grass has got a ways to go yet. I noticed it certainly is a lot thinner. Just the density of grasses isn't there like it normally is. And probably the other key thing that catches most everybody's mind or eye is the amount of weeds out there, or forbs as we like to call them. In this area, primary one is the annual sunflower. So the hills are just yellow, but there were a number of other species of annual weeds mostly that just really thrive this year. And that's not uncommon. We've seen that before in terms of the year after a drought. Back in 2002, for example, we had a pretty significant drought in most areas, and then in 2003, it was very similar. Not quite as prominent as it is this year, but and the way I like to describe it in terms of drought and the rangeland plant communities, it's like a disturbance. Okay, so it's a disturbance that really shocks that range plant community, if you will. And you know, other kinds of disturbances, you can have some things similar happen, like a wildfire with some bad timing, or you know, a very severe hailstorm in a small area, very heavy grazing. Things like that are all disturbances, and then you get these kinds of responses.
Anything that is overgrowing weed-wise that needs to be taken care of?
You know, for the most part, people do ask about that, the abundance of these annual weeds. I tell them really not to worry about it. They do have some value in terms of what they're doing as far as providing some cover, residue, and litter, which most of these sandhill soils really need. They like to have some residue litter on the ground to really help conserve moisture, keep soil temperatures cooler. And so next year, hopefully, if we continue our more near average rainfall pattern, there'll be a lot fewer of those weeds, and those grasses will continue to cover better yet.
What does the hay supply look like out here?
Hay production in terms of many of the Sandhills meadows has been variable. Here at Goodmanson, we were really quite pleased in terms of the yield of hay that we were seeing. And I've talked to several other producers in the Sandhills area that also indicated that they were pretty impressed with their hay production off the meadows this year. But then again, there were some locations that a little disappointing in terms of the hay yield. It probably has to do a little bit with the meadow and the extent of sub-irrigation that any individual might have.
Overall, probably a much more pleasant summer than last.
That's right, yes.